in Washington, D.C. and became the 46th U.S. president. People entitled to get immunized against COVID-19 in the second stage of the vaccination campaign currently underway. And Cartel Alpha Trade Union Confederation secreted on Wednesday the Finance Ministry in Bucharest. The Bucharest government on Wednesday passed a normative act under which people are included in the second stage of the anti-COVID vaccination campaign currently underway. Thus, homeless, people with disabilities, and the persons assisting them, sailors and workers on maritime platforms, members of the diplomatic missions, and athletes taking part in international competitions are included in stage 2 of the vaccination campaign, alongside people aged over 65, chronic patients, and employees working in 2 sectors. Stage 3A of the immunization campaign has also been revised to include essential staff, especially from the private sector, Prime Minister Florin Câțu announced. Since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, more than 700,000 cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed across Romania, and 630,000 patients have recovered. The total death toll has reached 17,485. About 1,000 patients are in ICU. The capital, Bucharest, is in the yellow scenario with an infection rate smaller than 3 per 1,000 inhabitants for the first time since last October. The Democrat Joe Biden took the oath of office in Washington, D.C. and became the 46th U.S. president. Today we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate but of a cause, the cause of democracy. At this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed, Joe Biden has said. The Republican Donald Trump, who ended his controversial mandate, had left the White House hours before without first welcoming his successor. 25,000 military had been dispatched for the inauguration on the empty streets of Washington, D.C., a city highly affected by the coronavirus pandemic and following the violence at the Capitol 2 weeks ago. Commentators say that no other president in the modern history of the United States had to deal with so many crises upon taking over his mandate as Biden. The coronavirus pandemic, economic emergencies, racial disputes, and the challenge of reuniting the nation that had been unable to agree on the candidate who wins the election. The protest organized by Cartel Alpha, one of the main trade unions in Romania, continued on Wednesday with the picketing of the Finance Ministry in Bucharest. On Tuesday, the trade unionists expressed their discontent at the headquarters of the ruling coalition parties, where their representatives met with the Liberal leader Ludovic Orban and the leader of the USR Plus Alliance, Dan Barna. Their main demands are a decent minimum wage, fair taxes, political services, unblocking collective bargaining, correct taxation, and the correct application of the laws. According to Deputy Prime Minister Dan Barna, part of the demands could be resolved in the upcoming period. Others are considered in the context of an economy in crisis, which was generated by the COVID-19 pandemic, and of a budget that should fall into the deficit target of 7% of the 30th Siberia, Central Romania was included for the second consecutive year on the list of 20 best European tourist destinations by the European Best Destinations Association. The competition for establishing the top will take place between January 20 and February 10. The historical center, ways of spending time in the open, the region's gastronomy, and exciting possibilities in the area is seen as the city's strong point. In 2020, Sibiu was ranked 6th in classification, ahead of Paris, Rome, and Florence. The President of the Republic of Moldova, Maia Sandu, paid a two-day visit to Brussels, where she had meetings with the heads of the main European institutions, as well as with members of the Union's executive and parliament. During the meetings, she highlighted the priorities of her mandate, especially fighting corruption, speeding up of access to the COVID-19 vaccine for doctors and frontline healthcare workers, stepping up economic cooperation, gaining support for farmers and small and medium-sized enterprises. The European Court of Human Rights has condemned Romania for violating the right to private life after the country's authorities refused to recognize the change of sexual identity of two people because they had not undergone gender reassignment surgery. The two persons of Romanian citizenship, aged 44 and 38, who are recording in the civil status register as females, complained that the court rejected their request to change their status because they did not provide evidence for gender reassignment surgery. And that was the news. Eager to resume their lives as they were before the pandemic, Romanians hoped in large numbers for vaccination against COVID-19. I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with more in this report by Daniela Budu. Just a few days after the launch of the platform specially created by authorities for scheduling people who want to get vaccinated against COVID-19, Romanians can no longer do that in Bucharest and in several other big cities in the country. Almost all the 365,000 positions available on the platform in the second stage of the vaccination campaign have been filled. Authorities say that the volume of applications has exceeded the possibility of allocating vaccines at the moment, and the appointments are also conditioned by the number of doses in stock. Of the vaccination campaign is intended for people over the age of 65, those with chronic diseases, as well as staff working in key public institutions. Romania has contracted sufficient doses, and also, starting with the second quarter of this year, the number of doses delivered to Romania will be significantly higher, which will allow us to accelerate the pace of vaccination so as to ensure in due time each person's access to vaccination, said the President of the National Committee responsible for coordinating activities relating to the vaccination against COVID-19, Valerii Gheorghiță. According to authorities in the second stage of vaccination, there are about 300 immunization centers in which some 30,000 vaccines are administered daily, but their number will increase as more doses arrive in the country. President Klaus Iohannis, who has visited vaccination centers in Bucharest, has voiced satisfaction that so many Romanians want to get vaccinated against the new coronavirus and announced that more such centers will start operating within days. Also, he has given assurances that more and more people will actually benefit from the vaccination service because in the coming weeks and months, more and more doses of vaccine will come to the country. However, Klaus Iohannis has pointed out that vaccination alone does not solve the situation created by the pandemic yet. Until we have a lot of vaccinated people, we need to strictly follow all the measures in place. We all want to return to a normal life as soon as possible. But this can only happen if, on the one hand, we observe the restrictions, and, on the other, if a significant share, which is 60-70% of the population, gets vaccinated. If we do things right, maybe this summer we will return to a normal life, Klaus Iohannis has stated. A recent study shows that 62% of Romanians want to be vaccinated against COVID-19. 36% of those who took part in the survey say they will be immunized as soon as they can. And 26% say they will, but not this year. The main reason why people want to get vaccinated is to avoid getting ill, while some of them do not want to get infected again.
Hello, this is Daniel Bills on the microphone. As early as the first days of this year, a series of workers from several professional categories took to the streets to protest the way in which the present centre-right government is handling the issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which seriously affected the economy of Romania. The protesters marched towards the government buildings, various ministries and county prefectures to voice their discontent and present their claims. Cartel Alpha, one of Romania's main trade union federations, on January the 14th kicked off a series of protests due to last until February the 28th. In order to comply with the prevention measures imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the protests are to unfold gradually, and besides street rallies, they are to include a series of other measures such as petitions, requests and discussions with MPs from all political parties. The protesters' main claims include decent wages and equitable pensions, high-quality public services, unblocking collective negotiations, fair duties and taxes, and the correct implementation of legislation. Here is Cartel Alpha leader Bogdan Hosu with details on the aforementioned protests. State employees are disgruntled with their rights and salaries that have been frozen for the year 2020, and with the fact that the pledged pay rise of 8% has been cancelled, so they can no longer reach the envisaged parameters of the unique budgetary pay law. Pensioners have also voiced dissatisfaction at the fact that their pensions are not fairly calculated. Those in the private sector are also dissatisfied with the employer's inability to provide the right pay rises in keeping with the transfer of tax liability from the employer to the employee. In a letter entitled "We All Have the Same Rights," Cartel Alpha has reminded all the governing parties, PNL, USR Plus and UDMR, that the austerity policy instated by the present government was not part of the pledges during the campaign for the elections on December the 6th, and the present economic and social background, as well as the health crisis which has been affecting Romania even before the elections, cannot justify such a quick shift in public politics. Trade unionists are aware that Romania, as the whole world, is currently facing a large-scale health and economic crisis, but they believe the country is in great need of balanced public policies made up through a series of real talks with social partners so that the efforts and costs may be fairly distributed. Without specific mentions, Deputy Prime Minister Dan Barna says part of the claims could be solved in the coming period. In a Facebook post, Barna says that some claims can be looked at from the viewpoint of an economy affected by crisis and a budget deficit which should stay at 7% of the GDP.
Time now for Hit of the Day, Radio Romania International. We invite you to listen to Feli and her latest single, No More Leaving, the last piece in a series inspired by the love songs of the great Maria Tănase.